to reverse the washing of the feet. Peter ends up crying bitterly because his other plan didn't work. So Jesus says, do you love me? And Peter says, yeah. And then Jesus says, well, here's how. Feed my sheep. Do you love me, Peter? Yes, I love you. Well, here's how you love me. Feed my sheep. Do you love me, Peter? Yes, I love you. Then here's how. Feed my lambs. In other words, Peter, you've got to get past yourself. And the only way you're going to get past yourself is if you get involved with others. You know, there's a lot of people who are convinced they can worship God and never have to go to church. They can love Jesus and never get involved with Christians. I can worship God. I can pray to God. I can study the Bible. I can sit in my TV and listen to really great preaching. I don't have to be involved with Christians. Well, then you're not feeding His sheep. If you're not feeding His sheep, you're doing it your way. If you're doing it your way, you very well may love Jesus, but you're sure not loving Him as He wants you to love Him. And here's what, you go to Hebrews, a really simple little thing here, but we forget it. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 and 25, page 1191. This is one of the ways we feed God's sheep. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 to 25. And you know, a lot of times, the simpler it is, the more meaningful it is, and the more from God it is. We're the ones that try and make our love for God have to be something dramatic, like taking a sword and cutting off someone's ear in defense of Jesus. Like saying, oh no, Jesus, here, let me wash your feet. You know, you shouldn't be washing mine, or following Him from a distance. And we end up doing it our way and not God's way. Here's something very simple you can do. If you want to feed God's sheep, verse 24, let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. That's feeding sheep, right? Let me read that again. Let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. That would be feeding Jesus' sheep. Let us not give up meeting together. Very simple. Go to church. You want to feed Jesus' sheep? Go to church. The problem is we look at church as something we receive. You know, and you leave church and say, man, that was the best music I've ever heard. Or man, I love that song. Or man, I love that sermon. Or I love that teaching. Or whatever it was. You don't go to church to receive primarily. We got it all backwards. We think we go to church to receive. We don't go to church to receive. We go to church to give. And that's why he says, let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another. And all the more as you see the day approaching. How do we encourage them? Go back to 24. Spur one another on towards love and good deeds. You do that when you meet together. Coming to church is a giving activity. It is not a receiving activity. Now, as you give, obviously you then receive. But remember, it's more blessed to give than to receive. If you just think that you're coming to get, well, that's kind of self-centered. And then that's Peter all over again. Thinking about Peter. Thinking about you. You come because you can pray for someone. You saw who was up here this morning. You don't know what they were praying for, but you saw they had something to pray about. Pray for them when you go home. Even if you don't know their name. Pray for the sisters when that came up. You know who's not here this morning. Pray for that person who's not here. Maybe they're going through something. If God is leading you, call that person on the phone. You know who is here this morning. Share the peace of the Lord with that brother or that sister. You know, you have to understand, when you're not here, it affects people. People wonder, where are he? Is he okay? Is she sick? What's going on with her? And when you are here, it affects people. And they're encouraged because they know your story by now. We're a small congregation. We've been together a long time. We know each other's story. And when that brother's in church praising God, we praise God because we know what that brother's going through. And when that sister's in church praising God, we praise God because we know what that sister's going through. And we spur one another on. But especially, you go to Matthew. There's a special group of people we should be encouraging and feeding the sheep. That's in Matthew. Matthew chapter 25, page 984. It's a beautiful section. Feed my sheep. You love Jesus? I love you, Jesus. Feed my sheep. Don't cut off the servants here. I didn't tell you to do that. Do you love me? I love you, Jesus. You know that. But then feed my sheep. Don't wash my feet. I didn't tell you to do that. Do you love me? I love you, Jesus. Well then, feed my sheep. Don't follow me from a distance. I didn't tell you to do that. Meet together. That's where God's sheep are. Encourage one another when you meet together. And who especially should we be encouraging? Go on verse 34, chapter 25. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty or give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger, invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of these, the least of my brothers, you did it for me."